Welcome back to the channel, and today we are looking at the Canada 1-cent coin from 1982 and asking the question that many collectors want to know: is this old Canadian penny worth more than 1 cent in circulated condition? The 1982 Canadian 1-cent coin is an interesting coin because it belongs to an important period in the history of the Canadian penny. This coin was produced by the Royal Canadian Mint, and it features the familiar Canadian maple leaf design that has appeared on Canadian 1-cent coins for many years. The obverse shows Queen Elizabeth II, while the reverse shows the denomination of 1 cent along with the year 1982 and the famous maple leaves design. The 1982 Canadian penny is especially interesting because this year was part of the period when Canada used a lighter copper alloy 1-cent coin. According to the Royal Canadian Mint, the 1982 to 1996 Canadian 1-cent coins were made with a composition of 98% copper, 1.75% tin, and 0.25% zinc. The coin weighs about 2.5 grams and measures approximately 19.1 millimeters across. The 1982 issue also has the distinctive 12-sided shape that collectors often associate with Canadian pennies from this period. The 1982 Canadian 1-cent coin had a very large mintage with hundreds of millions of examples produced for circulation. Because so many were made, this is not normally considered a rare coin in ordinary circulated condition. However, that does not mean every 1982 penny is worthless. The condition of the coin, the quality of the details, and any unusual error or variety can make a big difference to collectors. When we talk about circulated condition, we mean coins that have been used in everyday commerce. These coins may show scratches, marks, discoloration, and wear on the highest points of the design. A circulated 1982 Canadian penny is usually worth close to its face value when it is a normal example with no major error or special variety. In many cases, collectors may value a circulated example at only a few cents depending on the condition, and the buyer. The copper content can also make the coin interesting to collectors. The 1982 Canadian 1-cent coin is made primarily of copper alloy, and it is non-magnetic. The exact market value of any coin can change depending on metal prices and collector demand, but the real selling price of a common circulated coin is usually determined more by condition and collector interest than by the theoretical metal value. One of the most important things to check on a 1982 Canadian penny is the overall condition. A heavily worn coin with a dark surface and many scratches will usually have little premium value. A nicer circulated coin with clear lettering, a strong date, and good maple leaf details may attract more interest from collectors. Look closely at the obverse of the coin. The portrait of Queen Elizabeth II should be examined for signs of wear. The hair details, the facial features, and the lettering around the portrait can help determine how much circulation the coin has experienced. On the reverse, look at the 2 maple leaves and the details of the stem and leaves. The date 1982 should be clear and easy to read. Collectors should also check for unusual damage or possible mint errors. A genuine mint error can sometimes make a common coin much more valuable. Possible things to examine include unusual doubling, major off-center strikes, missing design details, or other abnormalities that appear to have happened during the minting process. However, many marks found on old coins are simply damage that occurred after the coin left the mint. This is very important because scratches, dents, and damage caused by machines are not usually valuable mint errors. A coin should be carefully examined before claiming that it is rare. If you believe your 1982 Canadian penny has a major error, you may want to compare it with trusted coin references or have it examined by an experienced coin dealer or professional grading service. For a normal circulated 1982 Canadian 1-cent coin, the value is generally modest. A heavily worn example may be worth around 1 cent to a few cents to a collector. A better circulated example with attractive color and strong details may bring a little more depending on demand. Coins in uncirculated condition can be worth more than ordinary circulated examples, especially when they have bright, original surfaces and very few marks. The most important lesson for collectors is that the year alone does not automatically make a 1982 Canadian penny rare. Many people see an old date and assume that the coin must be worth a large amount of money, but age is only one factor. Mintage, condition, rarity, demand, and errors all play a role in determining value. The 1982 Canadian penny is still a great coin to keep because it represents an important part of Canadian coin history. It was produced during a period when the design and composition of the Canadian 1-cent coin were changing, and it remains a popular piece for collectors who enjoy Canadian coins. If you find one of these coins in a collection or an old jar, do not clean it. Cleaning can remove the original surface and can leave scratches that reduce collector appeal. Instead, hold the coin by the edges and examine it under good lighting. Look at the date, the portrait, the maple leaves, and the overall surface. So what is the final value of a circulated 1982 Canadian 1-cent coin? For a normal circulated example with no major error or rare variety, the value is usually close to face value and may be only a few cents depending on condition and collector demand. A nicer example may be worth more, while a genuine rare error or special variety can have a completely different value. The best way to identify the true value of your coin is to examine the exact condition and compare it with recent market information. Remember that asking prices are not always the same as actual selling prices, and a coin is only worth what a collector is willing to pay for that specific example. The 1982 Canadian 1-cent coin may not be a $1 million coin, but it is still an interesting piece of Canadian history, and it is a coin worth checking carefully before putting it back into circulation or a coin jar. Sometimes the most interesting discoveries begin with a common coin, and a close look at the details. The history of the 1982 Canadian 1-cent coin is connected to a long tradition of Canadian pennies that began in the 19th century. The 1-cent coin was created to provide a small denomination for everyday transactions, and over the years the design of the Canadian penny changed as the country developed. By 1982, Canada had been using the familiar maple leaf design on the reverse of the 1-cent coin for many years. The maple leaf is one of the most recognizable symbols of Canada, and it gives the coin a strong connection to Canadian identity. The reverse design shows the denomination 1 cent with the year 1982 and 2 maple leaves. The obverse of the coin features Queen Elizabeth II. Her portrait appeared on Canadian circulation coins for many decades and represented the monarch of Canada during the period when the 1982 penny was produced. The 1982 1-cent coin was made during a period when Canadian coin production. Canadian 1-cent coins began using different materials and compositions. Millions of 1982 Canadian 1-cent coins were produced and distributed across the country. These coins were used in shops and businesses and passed through the hands of millions of Canadians. Because the coin was used so widely, many examples show the normal signs of circulation, such as scratches, darkening, and where the 1-cent coin continued to be an important part of Canadian daily life for many years. However, the cost of producing and distributing the penny eventually became an important issue. In 2012, the Canadian government announced the phase out of the 1-cent coin, and production of the Canadian penny ended in 2012. Even though the Canadian 1-cent coin is no longer produced, the 1982 penny remains an interesting collectible. It represents the everyday history of Canada during the early 1980s, and it is a reminder of a time when small copper coins were commonly used in daily transactions. For collectors, the 1982 Canadian 1-cent coin is important because it belongs to a large series of Canadian pennies featuring the maple leaf and the portrait of Queen Elizabeth II. While most circulated examples are common, the coin can still be valuable as part of a Canadian coin collection. The history of the 1982 Canadian penny shows that a coin does not need to be extremely rare to be interesting. Every coin that circulated had a story. A 1982 penny may have been used in a shop, a vending machine, or a family collection before eventually becoming part of a coin collection many years later. That is what makes the 1982 Canadian 1-cent coin special. It is a small coin with a simple design, but it represents Canadian history, Canadian culture, and the everyday life of people who used it during the 1980s. If you enjoyed this video about the 1982 Canada 1-cent coin value in circulated condition, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications for more coin values, coin collecting.